Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently, who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with our feature, Tom Wolfe, who died recently at the age of 88. A great writer, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, of our generation. And he was versatile. He could do anything. He started out as a journalist, then went on to do nonfiction, and then he graduated to fiction. Now, I write nonfiction, not as well as Tom Wolfe, but I can tell you I can't write fiction at all. And I'll also say there are very, very few fiction writers who can do nonfiction and nonfiction writers who can do fiction. He did them both equally as well. But besides all that, he was a chronicler of America. I think it's fair to say he was the American Charles Dickens. His early books included the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test about Ken Kesey and his merry pranksters and their experimentation with LSD, Radical Chic and Mau Mauing the Flatcatchers, about Leonard Bernstein's limousine liberal friends and their party for the Black Panthers, and the candy-colored, tangerine-flaked Streamlined Baby about Southern California car culture. All of this was part of the new journalism of the 1960s, which he didn't invent, but he was the best practitioner of, and has had a significant influence on writing journalism since then. Of course, his most well-known books are The Right Stuff about the Mercury astronaut, superb book, by the way, and The Bonfire of the Vanities, which was a great book and a meh movie starring Tom Hanks. I think the best way to get a handle on Tom Wolfe is with other critics and writers. So I'm going to start out with the Canadian Broadcasting Company, and they also mention his trademark white suit. When asked about it, he said it was neo-pretension, a typical Tom Wolfe work creation.
Tom Wolfe shook up the worlds of journalism and literature, and he did it all with wit and a white suit. He broke the rules, but stayed committed to telling the truth.
The real thing in this country is so much more spectacular than anything that artists have ever been able to do with it.
His legacy will be the words he leaves behind in articles, novels, and nonfiction books, including the new journalism, the style he helped create.
I really believe in the technique of trying to write from the inside. And to do that, you've got to build your writing wherever possible, out of scenes, out of dialogue, and the kind of details that novelists and short story writers use to bring it alive.
He was one of the most influential journalists of the modern time.
For this author and professor, it was Wolfe's way of writing that got everyone's attention.
He was a Baroque, extravagant writer who used exclamation points and italics and ellipses all over the page.
For many, Wolfe's soaring achievement was The Right Stuff, the story of America's pioneering astronauts. Hollywood liked it too.
I'm running this show here! We'll see about that!
Wolfe embraced fictional techniques fully with his first novel, The Bonfire of the Vanities, a satirical portrait of greed and excess in 1980s Manhattan.
Let's not lose our composure over a few $100 million.
On the surface, Wolfe was nothing but a Southern gentleman, his famous white suit becoming the stuff of pop culture legend.
He knew people were saying, who is that weirdo in that white suit and that, weird the blue shoes with the cane? I mean, what's he trying to prove? He wasn't afraid of that, and he wasn't afraid of writing controversial work that still demands comment today.
Wolfe also wasn't afraid to examine his own mortality.
It's quite humbling to know that despite all of your aspirations, all of your dreams, and all of the talents you think you have, you're made of clay.
Tom Wolfe died yesterday in New York City at the age of 88. Stephanie Skandaris, CBC News, Toronto.
Here's Washington Post critic Ron Charles.
Anyway, I could just leave you with this one message. And I assume there are probably lots of people under this tent right now who are interested in doing writing themselves. It would be that this is an astonishing country. It's unexplored almost. And my only message is go to it.
Tom Wolfe began as a nonfiction writer, as a journalist, and what he did was gradually revolutionize the field of nonfiction by adding elements of fiction that seemed audacious and bold and even crazy sometimes, but made nonfiction writing suddenly so much more fun, so much more alive, so much more creative. Tom Wolfe will be remembered, of course, for a book called The Right Stuff about test pilots in the U.S. space program. Here was a book that seemed to read like a novel. You could hear the sounds of these men and their work. You could see them. You could feel what they were going through. It was a totally new kind of immersive journalism. The pictures you always see of him in that white suit, the 3 times I saw him, he was always dressed just like that. I mean, he was kind of a Mark Twain character. He was always playing Tom Wolfe. But as great as his career was as a nonfiction writer, what I will remember him for are those novels that seemed to come out of nowhere at the time. I mean, here was a great journalist, a great nonfiction writer, and suddenly we get this enormous new kind of novel, The Bonfire of the Vanities, that takes on New York and Wall Street and whites and blacks, and just seemed like such an incredible enterprise. And then he follows that up with A Man in Full, a novel about Atlanta and a real estate developer. These books were so exciting, were so vast, were so active that they really seemed to pump energy back into American fiction. Very few journalists, very few nonfiction writers were able to make that transition to fiction as effectively as Tom Wolfe did. He felt that we'd lost something, that the great work of people like Thackeray and Dickens and Zola, people who wrote novels that captured whole eras, whole cities, that we had grown too effete, too narrow, too timid in the way we wrote novels. And he wanted to pump new energy back into the novel and make it really say something about the way we live now.
But in order to write about the coal mines, in order to write about the slums, you've got to go there. And you have to take a look at what goes on.
I remember hearing him at the National Book Festival, and he said, if you want to write a novel, get out from behind your desk, go out into the streets, look around, report, watch, see what's happening. That's the subject of a great novel.
Here's the NPR and BBC commentator Michael Goldfarb, and I love that he touches on the jealousy of people like Mailer and Updike.
These are the men who had the right stuff.
They all want to see Buck Rogers, and that's us.
Right stuff! Exclamation point, question mark. Right stuff? 15 exclamation points. What about this white stuff? The white suits everywhere you go in Manhattan, ... Manhattan, the dingiest, dirtiest metropolis in the first world. White suits, ... And white shoes, exclamation point. In streets carpeted in excrement, mostly dogs, but some of that stuff, who knows? You trying to make an impression or something, Wolfe? Often imitated, but absolutely inimitable. Tom Wolfe was sui generis. If you measure a writer's influence by the phrases he coins that pass into the language, he is the most influential American writer of the last 50 years. The Right Stuff, Radical Chic, The Me Decade, Balls Out, Good Old Boy. He didn't invent, but popularized Pushing the Envelope, Screw the Pooch, and Masters of the Universe. Wolfe was a style revolutionary, but far from radical in his worldview. He did a Ph.D. in American Studies at Yale. The Yale American Studies Department was an outpost of anti-communist Cold Warrior training in the early 50s when he was there, the CIA's favorite recruiting ground. The title of Wolfe's dissertation, The League of American Writers, Communist Organizational Activity Among American Writers, 1929-1942, gives a sense of the mindset there. This American Tory sensibility underpinned much of his work. He delighted in bashing the ultra-liberals, as in Radical Chic, his 1970 account of a fundraising cocktail party for the Black Panthers at composer-celebrity Leonard Bernstein's Park Avenue duplex apartment.
These are nice. Little Roquefort cheese morsels rolled in crushed nuts. Very tasty. Very subtle. It's the way the dry sackiness of the nuts tiptoes up against the dour savor of the cheese that is so nice, so subtle. Wonder what the Black Panthers eat here on the hors d'oeuvre trail.
And he reveled in writing the pain to true blue modern American heroes, the astronauts, in The Right Stuff.
It takes a special kind of man to volunteer for a suicide mission, especially when it's on TV.
You know, the government spends just all kinds of time and money teaching new pilots how to be fearless.
Dr. Wolfe's politics were carefully disguised by his wit and journalistic eye. His popularity was widespread, even among the liberals he skewered. In the 1980s, rich, famous, and ubiquitous, he decided to give fiction a try. He found subject matter for his first novel, Bonfire of the Vanities, just outside the front door of his Manhattan townhouse. New York in the 1980s, fires in the Bronx, and fortunes made out of thin air down on Wall Street. But fiction for him did not come easy.
I was so self-conscious. I assumed that if you wrote a novel, you would have a total freedom that you never have in nonfiction. Instead, what happened was that I suddenly found my brainstem flooded by all the rules that I had been taught in college. Henry James's rules of point of view, Virginia Woolf's rules of psychological concentration. All of this mental baggage was suddenly right there in my head.
Some of America's best-known novelists were peeved. They thought Woolf had strayed from his non-fiction lane. Norman Mailer and John Updike sniped at him, and when his next novel, A Man in Full, came out a decade later, they opened full fire. Updike called the novel entertainment, not literature, even literature in a modest aspirant form. Too much research, not enough authorial imagination, was the overview. Dr. Woolf gave as good as he got, and aligned himself with a different literary tradition.
I'm perfectly content with the title of chronicler. I think of Dickens. His primary goal was to write realistic prose that gave his readers a picture of life that they otherwise would not have had. And I would say that you should, if you're serious about writing a novel or nonfiction, give people that first. If it then ascends to some higher altitude that can be called a great moral purpose or a great, that's fine. By all means do it. But first create that great solid underpinning of discovered fact.
Discovered fact is a telling phrase, and the debate about the purpose of fiction is a good one to have. You can find truth in Mailer and Updike, but a mere chronicler and discoverer of facts can often be a guide to the future in a way the pure literary novelist cannot be. Tom Wolfe's Chronicle of 1980's New York gave us much more than entertainment. It told readers that, like it or not, we were in a new era, an era whose mores are now so embedded in American society that someone who symbolized Bonfire of the Vanities, New York, more than anyone, Donald Trump, is President of the United States. You can carve, "I saw Trump coming before you did," on Tom Wolfe's headstone.
The BBC. Got to get a little liberal politics in there. But his point about Donald Trump is mostly right. We're going to close tonight with Margot Kidder, who died recently at the age of 69. Beautiful, talented actress who unfortunately had a troubled life, and most of the press and the obits unfairly concentrated on that troubled life. She did a number of movies, but her greatest work was unquestionably her role as Lois Lane in the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. And this is a point I want to make that the obits didn't pick up. The two had a tremendous chemistry together. I don't know if you'll hear it anywhere else, but I would have to say in the tradition of William Powell and Myrna Loy, Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, and Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder were one of the great romantic screen couples in history. Probably the greatest we've had since Hepburn and Tracy. Here is Margot Kidder as Lois Lane on Clark Kent. That is Christopher Reeve's first day at the Daily Planet.
Oh, hi, Clark.
Hi, Lois.
How'd you like your first day on the job?
Oh, well, frankly, the hours were sort of longer than I expected, but on the whole, meeting you and Jimmy Olsen and Mr. White, gosh, on the whole, I'd say it's been swell.
Swell? Clark, there are very few people left in the world who feel comfortable saying that word.
What word?
Swell.
Really? Oh, so it's kind of natural.
Well, that was 40 years ago, but as I said, those two had a great chemistry. Sort of sad to think that two vibrant characters like Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve are both gone now. I hope they're reunited in that great celluloid Daily Planet building in the sky. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And we're going to close with that wonderful song from Superman that calls Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve to mind. Melody by John Williams, words by Leslie Bracus, and sung by Maureen McGovern. Can You Read My Mind?
You like pink?
I like pink very much, Lois.
Why are you?
I'm sorry?
I mean, why are you here? There must be a reason for you to be here.
Yes. I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You're going to end up fighting every elected official in this country.
Sure you don't really mean that, Lois.
I don't believe this.
Lois?
Hmm?
I never lie.
Oh, just how fast do you fly, by the way?
Oh, I don't know, really. No, never actually, bothered to time myself.
No?
Say, why don't we find out?
And how do you propose we do that?
Like, ride with me?
I'm